The United Nations organization discussed the elimination of unilateral extraterritorial coercive economic measures as a means of political and economic pressure. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, announced a new mega electricity plan with the participation of China, Turkey, and India for the generation of solar energy in the Andean region of the country. The United Nations organizations denounced forced paralysis of the education system in the Gaza Strip as a result of the Israeli aggressions against the region. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. United Nations organizations debate on Thursday the elimination of unilateral extraterritorial coercive economic measures as a means of political and economic pressure. Several organizations participate in the meeting, as well as the non-aligned movement and nations such as Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, Belarus, and the Russian Federation. At the session, the UN addressed how Western interference affects the economic life and social development of the people of the world. In this context, Colombia's permanent representative to the United Nations, Juliet Rivero, describes unilateral coercive measures as a violation of international law and the UN Charter.
Unilateral coercive economic measures constitute a violation of the principles of international law enshrined in the United Nations Charter, and they do harm to all aspects of life in the countries against which they are directed. In particular, they negatively affect access to food, clean water, sanitation, electricity, sufficient medicines, medical equipment, prevention and control of diseases, training, and the latest scientific, technological, and research knowledge.
In this sense, the Colombian representative called all member states to abstain from enacting and implementing such sanctions against any country, especially developing nations.
Colombia would call upon member states once again to abstain from enacting and implementing unilaterally economic, financial, or trade measures that are not compatible with international law or the United Nations Charter, and which prevent the full achievement of economic and social development, particularly in developing countries.
During his speech, the permanent representative of Bolivia to the UN, Diego Pari Rodriguez, emphasized that unilateral measures have devastating consequences on the economy and stability of the population of the affected countries.
Unilateral coercive measures, as the name quite well tells you, are arbitrary, capricious measures imposed by one state on another, with the aim of generating economic, trade and financial effects that are adverse to the country for political reasons that have devastating consequences on the economies and the stability of the populations of the countries that are affected. These unilateral measures not only affect governments, but they directly affect peoples. They affect their well-being, their development, and stop them building their life's projects.
Diego Pari Rodriguez also indicated that unilateral coercive measures constitute a violation of human rights and that all countries, especially developing countries, should unite and work together to put an end to this evil that affects so much the current society.
Unilateral coercive measures not only affect the development of countries and worsen the conditions of poverty and inequality, but also they constitute serious violations of human rights because they aim to make people suffer and take away from them the most basic things for their personal, family and community development. Our commitment to the United Nations Charter and the basic principles of international law should unite all countries together, in particular developing countries, so that we eliminate and pull up by the roots once and for all these unilateral coercive measures, and that they do not continue to pose an impediment to trade and investment between independent and sovereign nations.
In the meantime, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Belarus, Valentin Rybakov, denounced that the policy of sanctions against countries in the Global South limits the access to food and medicines.
We are talking about people's lives and their health, particularly that of women and children. When the authors and supporters of unilateral measures and the pseudo-politicians that finance them applaud the latest raft of sanctions, please remember that they are the ones that are depriving a child with a rare disease of the chance to lead a normal life and depriving a seriously ill pensioner of the chance to see their great-grandchildren or their grandchildren. They are the ones that are dooming millions of people in the countries of the Global South to starving to death. And that is no exaggeration. The statements of the USA and the European Union to the effect that their unilateral sanctions do not extend to potash fertilizer are also a lie. A direct consequence of the sanctions against Belarus's potassium fertilizer, which constitutes almost a third of global exports, was a significant drop in harvest yields in Africa.
Let's take a very short break, but remember you can now join us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, announced a new mega electricity plan with the participation of China, Turkey, and India for the generation of solar energy in the Andean region of the country. During his visit to Mérida State, the head of state urged to promote the economic development of the country, pointing out that by July they aspired to increase to 100 the credits granted for the benefit of the people. He also highlighted the strengthening of the entity for having been one of the most affected by guarimbas that began in 2014. At the same time, he expressed that the country is leading to peace, declaring that the guarimbas and intolerance in the Venezuelan territory will never come back.
Curando las heridas de la guerra económica.
Healing the wounds of the economic war, advancing in each one of the fronts. That is why today I announced that we have agreed on a new plan of higher level with China and Turkey to build solar energy parks and bring them to Mérida to produce at least 200 megawatts of self-generated electricity. Here, Madam Vice President, I want to come soon to start the assembly of the solar parks in Mérida, in the whole state of Mérida, soon.
On the other hand, a date of review and checking of the 1x 10x7 strategic plan was carried out in the municipality of Tucupita del Tamacuro Estate, led by the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez. During the event, Rodriguez made reference to all the violent actions promoted by the opposition sector in the country and called on the Venezuelan people to reject such crimes and exercise the right to vote on July 28 to achieve the victory of the candidate of the Bolivarian Revolution, Nicolás Maduro. On Thursday, Venezuela hosted the first international conference in the Americas to address the ongoing Palestinian Holocaust. The two-day event is being attended by the intellectuals from around the world who are meeting at the Romulo Gallegos Center for Latin American Caribbean Studies, CELARC, in Caracas, under the slogan "A New Holocaust in the 21st Century, and is threatening the world." And we go to Mexico, where the President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum held a press conference on Thursday in which she addressed several current national issues, including the essence of the fourth transformation, its projection, and the social justice it represents for the Mexican people. My pardon.
But another very important one is justice. I have said that justice has several sides. Social justice, which is the essence of the fourth transformation. For the well-being of all, first of all the poor. In its essence, it has social justice, environmental justice, justice for women, justice for the indigenous and the Afro-Mexican peoples. And I think that, in addition to the justice system in our country, one side has to do with justice beyond the criminal area. And I believe that today justice is being served to families.
In her speech, the elect president highlighted the strengthening of the current Venezuelan Mexican economic model and assured that neoliberalism will not return to the country.
The economic strength of Mexico is due to this change of economic model that took place in our country. We left neoliberalism behind and started the moral economy. The Mexican humanism, the fourth transformation, which changed the model. The economy was pushed from below. And this is what provides it with a huge power at this time, and also to continue receiving investments in the country. And the economic model will continue. We always said it, and it will always be so. Neoliberalism will not return to our country.
Colombia's Chamber of Representatives debated the labor reform promoted by the government of Gustavo Petro, advancing by more than 60% on its voting. The Chamber approved on Thursday several articles, among them the apprenticeships contract for students of the National Apprenticeships Services and those that define the work in digital delivery platforms. This law seeks to formalize labor relations from the beginning to ensure that workers receive all the corresponding legal benefit. And now changing topics. The United Nations organization denounced the forced paralysis of the education system in the Gaza Strip as a result of the Israeli aggressions against the region. The United Nations Public Work and Relief Agency for Palestinian Refugees said that Israel violates the right to education of at least 625,000 students, among them some 300,000 children. On the other hand, the Palestinian Ministry of Education informed that at least 4,851 students were killed during the Israeli attacks. The Palestinian entity also assured that despite the Israeli side, teachers of the Gaza Strip will launch a project to reactivate the education system. Israel's genocidal side persists in the Gaza Strip despite the constant demands for a ceasefire. The Gaza Health Ministry has reported that the Palestinian death toll from the Tel Aviv aggression exceeded 37,232 deaths and counts more than 85,037 civilians injured since the escalation of attacks on October 7, 2023, including 30 Gazans killed during the attack in the last 24 hours. United Nations warn of environmental and health risks for accumulation of garbage in Gaza Strip. The Public Works and Relief Agency for Palestine Refugees indicates that as of June 9, more than 330,000 tons of waste has accumulated in populated areas throughout the Gaza Strip because of the Israeli side, leading to a sanitary crisis due to the environmental impact. The destruction of more than 700 kilometers of water networks and 9 of 10 main storage tanks. Let's take our last break, but before we invite you to join us on our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on the screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Because the news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Financial break. Don't go away. Welcome back. And in Cuba, a U.S. Navy submarine entered Guantanamo Bay on Thursday following the arrival of 3 warship and nuclear submarine of the Russian Navy at the Havana harbor, where they will remain until June 17. The U.S. Southern Command specified that the USS Helena nuclear-powered fast-attack submarine is making a road harbor visit to Guantanamo during the scheduled trip to the region. In turn, AP reports that the submarine arrived off the Cuban coast in a show of force as a fleet of Russian warships assembles for the planned military exercises in the Caribbean. And we go to China when on Thursday, as the European Union imposed new tariffs on imports of Chinese electric vehicles, the Commerce Ministry spokesperson in the Yandong state countries reserves the right to present the case to the World Trade Organization. And South Africa, an opposition Ikiath Freedom Party, announced on Wednesday that it will ally with ruling African National Congress Party and its aim to form a coalition government. In the meantime, the new parliament in Cape Town is to converse in the first time on Friday after the vote produced not outright winner. Precisely, the Ikiath Freedom Party won 17 seats in the 400 members National Assembly, where the lawmakers will be called to appoint a speaker and elect the country's president.
The IFP will join a government of national unity that includes the ANC and the Democratic Alliance. In reality, the only options are to become part of the government or part of the opposition. The mandate we received from the electorate is for the IFP to contribute to the effective governance of South Africa.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. From teleSUR English and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.